We probably will not move because we love this area, but I don't want to go through this again.
It's a word no one in Windsor, Essex wants to hear again: flooding. Some homes in LaSalle are dealing with flooded basements, areas around the city with flooded streets and yards, some fallen branches as heavy rains, thunder and lightning pass through the city.
Windsor Essex County Health Unit is notifying the public of a potential exposure to COVID-19 on August 21st.
Honestly, they're extremely upset. It's the reason why I'm talking to you and they aren't, because, like I said, they've put everything on hold to make this business work.
2 people with COVID-19 symptoms visited 2 restaurants in Kingsville and a vineyard in Harrow. They later tested positive. Today, the health unit told the public about the potential exposure, but left businesses in the dark until after this morning's announcement. I'm Katerina Georgieva. We go straight to weather tonight. Colette Kennedy joins us now. Colette, severe weather today for our area, and that includes flooding. What is the situation right now?
Absolutely, and I want to show you exactly what you can expect, but for a moment I'm going to take you back in time to the overnight hours, the wee morning hours of last night and early this morning. So this is a perspective of 2 a.m. last night to early this morning, and I'm just showing you that radar imagery, giving you an idea as the rain develops, some of those heavy embedded thunderstorms pushing through 2 a.m. You could see the timeline there to about 8 a.m. this morning and those heavy rains that came through. By about 6 a.m. there were areas that had about 60 millimeters of rain. By 8 a.m. some areas between Windsor and Essex, 100 millimeters of rain, and thus, we had some of the flooding that we've been contending with. Now, in terms of what we are dealing with, I do want to talk about that as well, because we're not out of the woods yet. We are talking about, at this moment, what we're looking at in terms of a rainfall warning that is in place. So that rainfall warning, it's in place because of what's coming through with another wave that we can expect. 15 to 25 millimeters of rain, that possible tonight into the overnight hours before the system clears out. It's been a nearly stationary front that we're talking about. And then light at the end of the tunnel. This will be moving out as we go into the day on Saturday. But that rainfall warning in place. I'm going to give you more on this. We'll look at the model projections. That's all coming up just a little bit later in the show. Hang in there, everybody.
Thanks so much, Colette. We will check back in with you later on. Now, as Colette mentioned, lots of rain today, and we know that we've seen flooded streets and properties. A number of residents have seen their basements flooded out, some for the very first time. With more now, let's go live to the CBC's Sanjay Maru. Sanjay, you've been out in Windsor, Essex today. What did you see?
Well, Katerina, since the early hours of the morning, it has been raining, it has been pouring. In fact, I was woken up at 4 o'clock this morning to the sound of some of the loudest thunder I have heard in quite some time. What followed was a downpour. You can see it actually created some lasting effects on my camera there. And during my drive throughout Windsor, Essex today, I was directed to the area of Mount Royal Drive. That's just north of LaSalle. And I witnessed firsthand some homes that experienced basement flooding, some for the very first time.
First time I noticed this water was about after 8 o'clock this morning. Pump was working. It just started coming in. I've been downstairs since 6 o'clock this morning, dry basement, and it just coming in like a river. Well, the kitchen we just replaced from the last flood. The whole basement has been replaced, the flooring, everything. And we just put that kitchen in. We did flood in 2017. We got the water to get out, but the water did not come in as much as it did now. And then we went through that, and I'm going, we're not doing this again. And now all of a sudden, again. This leaves us to where they're going to have to come in here, bring some pumps in today. They're going to have to get rid of everything that's in this basement. It's going to have to air out. It's got to dry out. And it's going to be left up to us to fix it.
So we got up, the backyard was flooded right up to the back patio, and then when my son got up this morning, the water was up to the trim. He's never in water.
First time since 1965. We moved here January 25th, 1965. We changed the drain pipes from the east troughs, just like the city's asked, and we changed them, and now we got water.
And these heavy rains prompting a road closure in LaSalle on Front Road specifically. Officials with the town also tell me most of the calls they received today was related to surface flooding and standing water on roads and yards. They also add they only received less than half a dozen calls related to water within homes. But officials are asking drivers wherever they run into areas like this to simply turn around and make sure that you avoid that water at all costs and seek an alternative route.
Now, Sanjay, we knew that rain was coming, but the amount of rainfall is actually way more than was predicted. So tell us about that.
That's right. This rainfall actually exceeded Environment Canada's expectations. Let's show you these numbers. Previously, the Weather Authority had predicted 75 millimeters of rain to fall in parts of Windsor, Essex by tonight, but that was already surpassed just at 8 o'clock. As early as 8 o'clock this morning, close to 100 millimeters of rain reported in parts of the region. And the latest number we can tell you, up to 125 millimeters of rain in parts of Windsor, Essex. That's according to volunteer observers with Environment Canada. And this heavy rainfall, Katarina, comes just one day before the region's 3-year anniversary of those 2017 floods, which devastated about 6,000 basements. And as for today's flooding and today's rainfall, the rainfall is expected to continue throughout the night, with thunderstorms included in that as well. Katarina.
Thanks so much, Sanjay. And we'll have more, of course, with Colette Kennedy later on. Thanks for this. Today, the local health unit notified the public of a potential exposure to COVID-19. 2 people with symptoms who later tested positive visited 2 restaurants in Kingsville and a vineyard in Harrow on August 21st. The CBC's Tamina Aziz spoke to some of these owners who learned about this first through the media. She joins us live now in Kingsville. Tamina, how are these business owners reacting?
Kat, the business owners that I spoke to today were pretty upset, seeing as how they learned about this potential exposure through the media and then later through the local health unit. Now, they say they follow all the safety protocols and they keep track of their customers, but they wish that they were personally informed before their businesses were publicly named.
I guess we would have liked to have been notified, so we wouldn't have been caught off guard and visited by the media today. But I mean, if we were contacted, we would have had the ability to contact the people on our reservation list and let them know.
This article came out at 10 o'clock this morning, and you and I are speaking now at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and my clients have only just now received a direct call from the health unit themselves. I find it amazing and incredibly disorganized and unprofessional that the health unit couldn't have been bothered to at least make a courtesy phone call to all 3 of the businesses that were affected, not just El Diablo, but Winology and Mushedra Wineries, to say, hey, this has happened, here's what you need to do, and here's what steps you need to take to ensure your customers are safe. My clients are terrified because they don't know how this is going to affect their business, because now there's this cloud that's going to hang over them of, like, have people been exposed, have they not been exposed? And, everyone was dining outside, so we know the risk of exposure is extremely low. But still, I mean, who's going to pay for the loss of business that my clients and, John Michael and Bridget are suffering right now?
Now, the local health unit released this statement in response. They say its top priority is to notify the public as quickly as possible in any case where public notification is needed for a potential exposure. The information shared this morning occurred in parallel to other notifications that are part of our overall process, including discussions with each identified business. This is the first time the local health unit has issued this type of notification, and we will refine our processes going forward to improve coordination of our communications. Now, the health unit says that they believe the risk of transmission is low, but they ask those who have visited these 3 places on August 21st to do an online self-assessment COVID-19 test, which you can find on their health website.
So how are people there feeling about this potential exposure?
I spoke with 2 people today. It was both their first time dining in since the start of the pandemic. Now, after hearing about this potential exposure, they find it concerning and it discourages them from doing it again.
It makes me a little anxious knowing that there might be somebody in the building without a mask sitting in a seat, even though it's 6 feet from me, still a little bit, anxiety provoking, I guess. It was at a certain restaurant. I probably would avoid that restaurant until I heard otherwise.
Very concerned. I'd like to know which shops they are, because I won't be going in them. If they don't ensure that people wear masks, then I'm not going to go into the shop.
These are the kinds of reactions these business owners were afraid of. They don't want people to feel like they can no longer visit or dine. They strongly believe in their confidence in the safety measures that they've put in place, and they'll continue to run business as usual. Kat.
Thanks, Tamina. The CBC's Tamina Aziz live in Kingsville. Pardon me. Oh. You know what, folks? It's live television. Sometimes I follow the cameras. Moving on now to another story. Stage 3 of Ontario's reopening plan has now been in place nearly everywhere in the provinces for at least 4 weeks. A little more than 2 weeks, though, here in Windsor, Essex, but it's been enough time to spot a trend provincially in the number of new COVID-19 cases. So far, there's been no big jump. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley looks at what's happening and why.
On the tables, they are specified 6 feet apart.
When Ontario allowed restaurants and bars to resume serving indoors, there were predictions that COVID cases would spike. 1 month later, with August drawing to a close, that hasn't happened.
Given the businesses that were reopening and the activities that we were allowing, I was expecting an increase, and we have seen an increase, but that increase has not been as rapid as I would have thought.
As recently as June, Ontario was averaging upwards of 200 new cases each day. Restrictions were loosened across nearly all the province by late July, yet since then, there has not been a big surge.
To me, that seems like things are going relatively okay, that, there is a small rise, but certainly not this catastrophic rise that we've seen in certain places.
Places like the U.S. Take Illinois, for example, a similar population to Ontario, yet that state has had more new coronavirus cases in the past 2 days than this province has had all month.
Overall, Ontario is doing well. Not as good as we could be doing, but well.
Other hopeful signs? More than 700,000 COVID tests this month, less than 0.5% were positive. The number of patients hospitalized with the virus is way down, and there's been on average just 1 COVID-related death per day this month. So why has Ontario's reopening been, at least so far, a relative success? Summer weather has helped, since the risk of transmission is lowest outdoors. Experts say all those mandatory mask-wearing rules make a big difference, and credit goes to people for taking physical distancing seriously.
We are in stage 3 of reopening, but everybody is still behaving in general in a way that recognizes that COVID is still with us and that we still need to take precautions.
That was the theme from all the experts I spoke with. So far, so good, but Ontario mustn't let its guard down. And in the weeks to come, there are risks that infection numbers could surge again.
If we can't keep the schools open, this entire game is lost. Everything rides on whether schools can be opened up safely.
Schools start opening their doors in some parts of the province in less than 2 weeks. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
People with a disability are particularly vulnerable when it comes to employment and income during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's according to a new Stats Canada survey. Of the 13,000 Canadians who took part, a third of them reported a temporary or permanent job loss or reduced hours after the virus shut things down. Jacob Barker has more.
The COVID-19 pandemic has had a direct impact on work for Kevin McShann.
I was actually supposed to go back to working with the Discoverability Network after I left the YMCA, and just before I was about to sign a new contract, the pandemic hit.
McShann has spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. He's not surprised by the finding that people with disabilities are disproportionately affected during the pandemic.
I think it's 2 reasons. I think it's lack of education on the employer, and I also think it's lack of opportunities that are available for people with disabilities.
Inequality was already there for people with disabilities in the job market before the pandemic, but the recent study by Stats Canada highlighted the issues they've faced since the lockdown began. 36% of people with a long-term condition or disability reported a temporary or permanent job loss since March, and many said their household income dropped by more than $1,000, and more than 40% said it had a major or moderate impact on their ability to get food and groceries.
It wouldn't hurt to find some job and to make some extra cash, you know?
Mohammed Nadi also has been on the job hunt throughout the pandemic. While he may have a prospect on the horizon, finding a job has been challenging. And while he is concerned for himself, he's also concerned for others.
My cerebral palsy is barely a hassle on me. I'm focused more on the blind or the hearing impaired or the people who are wheelchair bound for life.
And McShann points out that as things come back online, the disabled are not being considered.
Business owners who are looking to restart their business because of the pandemic are, I guess, not willing to sort of go out on a limb to try and infuse more people with disabilities because they're looking to get their business back up and running.
McShann says in most cases it costs businesses less than $500 to accommodate disabled employees. So he hopes that they do come to learn that it's less about expanding financially to bring them on board, and it's more about expanding the opportunities they have for them. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
When we come back, we'll take a closer look at the weather forecast. A tremendous amount of rainfall has led to flooding in our area. Colette Kennedy will be back with more of what you can expect when we return. Those hoping to settle in with a film under the stars will have to wait a little longer. Tonight, WIF was going to show Dirty Dancing and Air Force One at Windsor's Festival Plaza, but today's weather issues are causing a delay. The films are being rescheduled to Monday. Tomorrow's matinee is also being moved to Tuesday. The Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, has announced he's stepping down. The 65-year-old has suffered from a chronic illness for several years, and he says he doesn't want it to get in the way of decision-making. Abe is the country's longest-serving prime minister. This is the second time he's resigned for health reasons. It's unclear whether he'll remain in the post until a successor is chosen. Colette Kennedy joins us now. Colette, we've been keeping a close eye on the weather. It's been a wet one, flooded basements, just not a good scene.
Absolutely not. And you know, even though this is sort of a frontal boundary that's nearly stalled, and finally we're going to be able to kick this out of here and see some improvement, it does have the impact of Laura in terms of the jet stream has been pulling some of that moisture source, that tropical moisture. So it has had that kind of component to it as well. So we do have the rainfall warning for southwestern Ontario. A little further east is a weather statement because of the rain that's going to be coming in there overnight. I think this is all we really need to concentrate on and what's to come. So yes, we have another round that's going to be coming in later this evening and through the overnight. And then after that, we'll be able to take a big deep breath as things will improve Saturday and for the rest of the weekend. I want to kind of broaden the perspective here so you get a better idea of what's still left kind of from the system along this boundary. As I say, it's finally going to move on. The jet stream is going to help it push out of here, and we'll see that as we go through tonight. You'll see some of the waves, and this becomes a little more linear and starts to kind of get itself organized, and that, in a sense, it's bad in terms of what it will put down in terms of the moisture, but good in the sense that it can have some motion to move on. And so as we go through the overnight, some of the heavier rains moving through towards the earlier morning hours, then finally starting to dry out. So even towards tomorrow morning, 7, 8, there's a little disagreement in the models, but so it could linger a little bit towards that. But then as we get towards the later morning, drying out, and then through the day, drying out and getting even better. Towards the afternoon, I'm actually putting sun into our forecast for Saturday, and then Sunday looking much better. So this is what I'm seeing in terms of 15 to 25 millimeters additional to come. I know when we're talking about flooding, that's the last thing you want to hear, but that's what I'm seeing. Our current temperatures, by the way, right now, that's kind of the last thing on our mind, but just to show you where we're at, you can feel some of the humidity. Again, some of that tropical moisture that's been pulled in from what was Hurricane Laura. So that 15 to 25, our temperatures overnight tonight sort of just nearly stable, essentially around that 20 degrees. Tomorrow afternoon, isn't this a pretty picture? Yeah, a chance to kind of dry out, get some sunshine coming back and sort of stabilize the atmosphere, right? And then as we get into Sunday, slightly cooler, that doesn't really last. And then things coming back towards those mid-20s, even some upper 20s. Next system, we get a couple of dry days. Looks like it's coming back towards us midweek next week.
Well, Colette, just looking at that, I'm sure a lot of people are breathing a bit of a sigh of relief.
I know, we've just got this next round. I wish I could say it wasn't there. This next round, and then, yes, we get several days for the ground to kind of settle and things to, yes, let's dry out.
And hopefully it's just a little bit, and hopefully we won't see any more of those basements flooded that we saw earlier in the program. So here's hoping.
Yeah, my best to everybody who's dealing with that.
Thank you so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
Now, we've got our share of messy weather here in our area, but coming up, we're going to take a closer look at a rough situation down south. Hurricane Laura has been a deadly storm, now downgraded to a tropical depression, but still dangerous. So we'll bring you that update when we come back. Welcome back. Tens of thousands of people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington today, demanding criminal justice reform and racial equality. The event was organized by Reverend Al Sharpton, who gave an impassioned speech. He told the crowd that Black parents have been teaching their children to be wary of the police for a long time. And he said those family conversations shouldn't be necessary.
We've had the conversation for decades. It's time we have a conversation with America. We need to have a conversation about your racism, about your bigotry, about your hate, about how you would put your knee on our neck while we cry for our lives. We need a new conversation.
Several other people spoke too, including the parents of Jacob Blake, the Black man who was shot in the back by police in Wisconsin on Sunday. Today's event was timed to mark the anniversary of Martin Luther King's historic I Have a Dream speech. He delivered it at the Lincoln Memorial on this day in 1963. The remnants of Hurricane Laura continue to push north and east through Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. The storm, which is blamed for at least 6 deaths, has been downgraded to a tropical depression, but it still brings the threat of tornadoes and heavy rain.
We've got water damage on the second story and a little bit on the first story as well. But other than that, that's pretty much it. We kind of dodged the bullet.
This homeowner decided to ride out the storm in the hard-hit community of Lake Charles, Louisiana. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses remain without power or water. Recovery teams are arriving from as far away as Florida, but their work is being hampered by fallen trees that are blocking roads. Cleanup and reconstruction are expected to take months. It is 6:29 p.m. That is it for CBC Windsor News. We'll leave you with another look at some of the scenes from today. We had a major downpour that led to flooded streets and basements in our area. Stay safe as that rainfall warning stays in effect into tonight, with the chance of showers continuing into tomorrow. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and we're on social media as well. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Power and Politics is up next. Have yourselves a great night and a safe weekend.